Welcome to the Natural Health Podcast, where we bring awareness of sustainable health in the business hustle space. The Natural Health Podcast is perfect for the high-performing, business-minded individuals who want to work with their biochemistry to achieve success and optimal health. It's Friday, which means it's time for friends sharing facts about health, business, and overall success. In today's episode, we talk to Leanne Francis. Leanne is an intimacy and relationship expert, speaker, comedian, and author who guides individuals and couples in achieving fulfilling relationships with themselves and others from the inside out. What makes Leanne unique is her integrated approach and innate gift to focus in on exactly what is needed and work with the mental, emotional, physical, spiritual, and sexual aspects of intimacy in a safe, trauma-informed, and non-judgmental way. She works with and honors the diversity and co-creativity power of each person, as well as the relationship, which allows truly satisfying, powerful, and lasting relationships to be created, but also sustained. Leanne has spent the last 20 years integrating ancient wisdom with modern science and the most effective transformations tools so that you can get the best results quickly and easily. Some of the tools Leanne uses are coaching, hypnotherapy, family constellations, somatic therapy, sacred sexual healing, tantra, explorative practices, emotional release techniques, energy works, aspecting, breathwork, and conscious communication. Leanne is here to help you become your own intimacy authority and enjoy the enriching relationships that you deserve. What she absolutely enjoys is barefoot hiking, gardening, and also painting. Welcome to the Natural Health Podcast, Leanne.
Hello, welcome. Thank you.
That was a lot of things that you do in intimacy. I mean, intimacy is a big topic, so there is so many aspects that it can come from.
It's true. I know people they ask me, they're like, and what modalities do you use? I'm like, let's just get down to what you need here.
There's so many things. So barefoot hiking, what does that look like? I mean, a lot of individuals go out and they buy these hiking shoes that cost hundreds of dollars, but you just go barefoot.
Just go barefoot. So the first time I did it, I was like, how is this going to be? Are my feet going to hurt? Are they going to? So I did, the first time I did it, I had a backup plan and I had my shoes in my pack. In case I needed to put them on. And what I found was I absolutely did not want to put them on. I sort of, was walking and you're kind of going through different terrains and you're like, oh, might be uncomfortable. Maybe if you're more rocky terrain, it can be uncomfortable. If I was perhaps barefoot hiking in a really rocky, dry area, I don't know if I'd enjoy it as much, but here in Vancouver, Canada, we have a rainforest, big, huge, old growth rainforest. And I was so shocked at how soft the ground is in the forest. It's so soft. And after my first hike, we did 3 hours. That was my first barefoot hike. And I actually didn't want to put my shoes on. And then I did, and I actually felt weird.
Yeah.
Having shoes on again. And I was like, I need to do this more. This is just such a connective experience.
Yeah, it's so beautiful. And I mean, the science, and us humans, we know what it means to be barefoot on the ground and be connected, but yet alone in a rainforest that's, like you said, has been there for years and years and hundreds of years and been growing. And oh my gosh, that would just be like a rejuvenation.
Yeah. So, we go out and you can go into the treat areas. You can go up, the side of a waterfall on the rocks, right? And then your feet get just this nice big, kind of stone massaging feel under them. And then you can go through the little water pools and cool your feet off. And then you might get some mud and oh my gosh, I feel like a little kid when I hit the mud.
Oh, you get into a little puddle and you jump in.
In it.
I love it. Absolutely love it. So Leanne, look, you've been doing this intimacy thing for a number of years. I mean, what have been the key turning points in your life? I mean, what made you decide to, go down that route?
Well, I think if you told me when I was younger that would be the route, I probably would have thought you were nuts. Because I mean, it's so interesting. I've always been able to see in other people that the thing that they often struggle with the most in their life ends up being like their great big gift, right? They move through it, they get through it. They've had to go through it at such a level that other people haven't, that they become experts at it. And that becomes this thing that they get to share. And yet in my own life, when it was finally suggested to me that I fully concentrate on relationships and intimacy by 3 different people in the same week, I was like, no. And then my little own guide voice that I would use when other people came in and was like, but that's kind of sums up all of the problems you've ever had in your life. And I was like, it kind of does. Whether we're talking, I had my neck and my back severed by the time I was 2 in 2 different places by someone that I loved and took care of me. And so right then and there, there's clearly some relationship issues, not only with the external world, but also with my own body, right? And how I was regulating and all of this stuff. Although I wouldn't learn that until I got much older and really begin to understand how much that did affect my body. Sometimes when things happen when we're really young, we just kind of get used to it, right? And we don't really understand how much that affects our whole integrated way of being. And, so we have that. Then you fast forward, I've got some sexual abuse, more physical abuse. There was emotional, verbal, all that going on in there. Teenage years, then, raped. So now we're going through almost like another sort of layer of sexual abuse going on. And then, of course, I get into my sort of more self-directed years. And I'm now attracting in these relationships. Like, this is what I'm attracted to. And, even though I thought I was doing better, and, this is like a deep, compassionate place to have for people that are in abusive relationships. But, sometimes we come from some of us, not everyone, but some of us, like myself, I came from such a rough childhood experience that by the time I was dating, these men that seemed abusive to other people seemed like super nice to me. I was like, he's not punching me. Like, what's wrong with a hole in the wall? Like, that's not a big deal, right? I mean, that was part of my everyday normal life. He wasn't hitting me. It couldn't be that bad. And so I had to make that journey through all of that in my own relationships and work towards a full healing of my own sexual self, of my own emotional self, boundaries, moving away from people pleasing, actually learning to communicate in an actual way that works. The whole gamut. And then, of course, I had PTSD from when I was younger. So that's like a whole big interference in my relationship with myself, right? Like, how do you navigate that? Even once I was getting into healthy relationships, they would touch me in a certain way that would bring like flashbacks and dissociation from when I was a child. So now you're just like ultra leveling it. And then, of course, I get into years where I'm actually doing therapy. I'm actually working at a clinic for autistic children. And they're like, Leanne, you're so on the spectrum. You need to get diagnosed. And again, a whole nother layer was like, oh my gosh, this is why like genes drive me nuts. And like all of these little things that I had just thought, just made me super weird and was just like my own problem. All of a sudden there was so much information around and I could understand myself again on another level. And then again, be able to express my needs and change my relationship with myself and the others that I was in relationship with based on knowing myself better. Right.
Wow.
So yeah, I like looking back now, I kind of make this little joke. It's like, I don't know how I could have done anything in my life differently because it all kind of led to this work. Even, early, I was a doula for 20 years. So I worked with couples, helping them birth their babies. I didn't realize at the time I was working, I was doing breath work with them. I was like transposing tantra techniques on them because it helped with the contractions. I was helping the couples connect. I was talking to them about their sexuality, right? And then my corporate career was all negotiations. I was a middleman. So I was doing all negotiations between two people, which is very relationship oriented. And I did a lot of entertaining, also relationship oriented. And then I decided to drop out of all of that. And I was like, I just want to do something holistic, something that just like really feels true to my soul. And that was when I ended up moving into some of the modalities, like the hypnotherapy and the family constellation practitioner and all of that. I started doing that kind of work and really working with people one-to-one. And then those people said, what you really need to be doing is relationships and intimacy. And so I took the leap and I did it. And, I'm like the rest of the world. I know a whole ton, but I'm also still learning because I don't think there's an end to learning about intimacy in other people, ourselves even.
I love that. Wow. I mean, as you were talking, I literally had goosebumps all around my body because I was like, wow, like, thank you so much for being so open, so honest, so vulnerable with myself and the audience. Really appreciate that. And I mean, by you being vulnerable and by you being honest and true to yourself, it allows us and the people that are listening to be more vulnerable and more true to themselves because they can go, wow, I relate to that. Or wow, oh my gosh, I see myself in that. And I'm not just a weirdo, or it's not just me thinking like that or feeling that. Some other people are out there feeling like that. And that's what's missing a lot of the time out there. So it's such a blessing that, such a blessing. I know it's what you've been through, and for you, the biggest blessing is what you're doing now, I think, because you're able to assist so many individuals on such a deep level, and I think it's just beautiful. I think it's absolutely amazing. So yeah, thank you for listening to those three people and your voice inside and actually pushing through and becoming that, because sometimes it's hard for us to have that mirror in front of us, and face all those things.
Yes, I have a little deal with the universe, whatever you want to call it. And I always say, if I hear something 3 times, I promise, listen, I will not argue. I will not resist. I will just simply do. So yeah, that one could have come in clear, like 3 people all in the same week, just randomly calling me, all relationships experts themselves. And they're all like, you changed how I looked at my marriage. You changed. And I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I better just go with this.
Okay, I'll do it.
It was how it was. I mean, coming from such a sort of tumultuous background, it was really hard for me to look at myself as being as being successful in relationships myself. I was like, oh, but I've been through so much. And it's like, yeah, but because I have been, for me to look in on somebody else's life, it's actually a bit easier in some ways. It's like, I've been through so much, so I can look at them and go, oh, you know what? Here's a really, simple way of getting to this outcome, or here's, probably how the other person is feeling, and this may be how you're feeling. Tell me, and they're like, oh, like that's so true. And, my partner says that all the time, but it's so frustrating. And I'm like, I know, but our brains all work different, and our, right? Like, it's, I think to do this kind of work, it really helps to have a great deal of experience, because you have a great deal of empathy and compassion for all the people that are in the relationship, all the different ways they process, all the different traumas that are affecting them, whether we, realize it or not, just we're so simple yet so complicated at the same time.
Yeah, and that's what makes us amazing, because some things that we look at, we're like, wow, it's so simple, and then we're like, why are we making it so complicated?
But we have these, highly developed brains.
Yeah. We forget sometimes. I know I do. Well, Lynn, I wanted to ask you, success, right? I mean, back then success would have looked so different to you. And like you said, because you saw this person doing something that, something as simple as, punching a wall, you're like, oh, that's not bad at all. They're not punching me in a way. I mean, now you see the world and everything a lot differently from what I understand. So what does success actually look like for you right now?
So I am like in a really holistic place. How I look at success, I don't think is how some people do. I went through my years of making tons and tons of money. I had so many fears about my own upbringing growing up and not having money and all of this, that by my 20s, I was making a lot of money at multiple properties. I was like what everybody thought was successful. I thought I had met all the things that I had been taught would make me feel good in my life. So I had, marriage that looked really good from the outside. I had money. I had like really good career. I was recognized in my industry as being a particular expert. And yet I was like not all that happy, although I didn't even realize it until I had this kind of big breakthrough, whatever you want to call it. And was like, wow, I don't think I'm truly happy. Like, what is it that I'm missing? And, what I've learned is that's just being in the present moment. It's being in the flow of life. It's doing what turns me on. It's like being happy. It's like enjoying having your feet in the mud instead of worrying about your feet being dirty. It's having a laugh at those moments that are difficult. It's being able to rest in the center of a storm when it's happening in your life, because your life will never be perfection. There's always going to be things moving through it. And we have to learn to laugh at those things, and we have to learn to settle into those things and flow with it and just be ourselves, and not close our hearts off, not close ourselves off, but at the same time, be able to give our inner self that sense of safety and be able to speak to ourselves in kind, loving ways and treat our body with kindness. And that's how I look at success now. I look at success like, how do I feel? Am I enjoying my life? Am I embracing my relationships? I think one of the biggest moments that I understood that I did feel successful was I was on a plane, and we're going to crash. And one of the other people that was on this actually does a whole talk on it. I don't, but we were on it. We're going to crash. We're going to crash. We're going to crash. It's a big story. But as we're going down, I watched people responding in so many ways. There was, an older couple in front of me. They were like, wow, we finally just started to do our bucket list, and now we're going to die. What the heck? We haven't done anything that we loved. Now, like, it's the end. There's people cracking jokes in the back, like how nothing can kill them. Like, it was so interesting seeing everybody's response. And I decided just to go deep into my heart and ask myself that I really lived a life that I was satisfied with. And I looked at my relationships, they felt good. I looked at my life and what I had contributed, and it felt good. I looked at who I was, like, could I go and feel like I did something? Like, is there something in my backyard, I call it, that I hadn't cleaned up, like some way I had trespassed with somebody else and that I had just left? And there wasn't. And I was like, this is what it feels like to be successful. I think if you think that right now you could leave this world and it would feel good, like whatever you've created, whatever you've experienced, I think that is a good way of acknowledging what success is and isn't.
Wow, that is definitely something to think about. I mean, being at the verge of crashing, potentially dying, and realizing that, my life is pretty good and I'm pretty happy with everything that's going on. And I feel like I'm successful and I'm happy to, leave this earth. I mean, a lot of individuals, including myself, I don't know, I don't think at the moment, it's kind of like, oh, there's so many things, you could do, and you could do this and you could do that. Like there's people in front of you, like you said, the elderly, and they're like, I haven't done my bucket list, and it's just kind of like we keep putting things off, and it's like, oh no, we'll do that then. Oh no, we'll do that then. Oh, I'll find my partner then. I'll do that with my kids. I'll do that with my business. And it's just kind of like a little reminder of what you just said. It's just kind of like a little moment. And you said a word there, and you said it was kind of like you hit a breakthrough when you realized what success, your shift of success changed. You hit a breakthrough or bottom.
Yeah, because I mean, I see clients all the time. They come in here and they've got, multi-million-dollar businesses. I mean, they look super successful, and they're like, there's something that's just not like, I'm not satisfied. There's something they're not, so even though they have this idea of what success should look like and they've exceeded it, they don't feel it deep inside.
Yeah.
And they'll say, like, I drop my kids off at school. Everybody thinks I'm successful. I run into everyone thinks I'm successful. But there's like something deep inside of them when they're being really honest with themselves that doesn't. And usually it comes back to our relationship with self and our relationship to others. And are we really living our life on purpose? Are we really embracing moments when they come? Are we really spending that moment laughing with that person when we're there, crying with that person when,
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's absolutely amazing. I mean, I've been so excited and waiting to interview you. I mean, I was so excited about this topic. I mean, the topic of like the alchemy of intimacy. I was so excited about it. I was like, yes, I can't wait to talk about it. I mean, you've already blown my mind, and just the introduction. We haven't even gone into the topic, but let's talk about, because when we think about intimacy, right? A lot of people think different things. A lot of people think intimacy is this, intimacy is that. But are you able to start off and just give us an introduction of what intimacy is in basics?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the exploration, the experience, the interaction that happens in a connection, right? And so, I mean, it's when we're being intimate with ourselves, it's how clearly can we see ourselves? How fully can we be with ourselves? Can you be fully present with yourself through different emotion? Can you really be open to see aspects of yourself that you may not like, or that you were told were not okay? Are you able to see your fullness at the same time? Are you able to see your brilliance as well? Are you able to be with your whole self? Right? And then that translates into our experience with others. Are you able to be fully with yourself? And are you able to be fully with that other person? And are you able to now fully experience them? If you're not able to fully experience yourself, you're not going to be able to fully experience someone else, and vice versa. And then, we can move into our, of course, people think about sex very often, right? You can have sex without intimacy all day long. I call it fast food sex. It's like driving to McDonald's. It can be fun. We've all done it. Right?
I love it.
You want to have McDonald's every day? Probably not. Goes for some fine dining. Right? And so there's sex without intimacy, and there's sex with intimacy. And those are two very different things, right? So I do teach sexuality as part of intimacy, but I also recognize that sex doesn't need to be intimate at all. And for some people, it's not. And that's totally okay. And then we have, experiential intimacy. There's like a whole world around us, right? And we have a whole level of being intimate with it. How are you intimate with the earth? I mean, the earth sits here and holds us, provides for us, gives to us. Are you able to walk into the forest or into your backyard and really see that you have a connection with the trees, that you have a connection with your garden, that you have a connection with everything around you, and it feeds you and you feed it, and there's an exchange that goes on there too. And so intimacy happens with ourselves, happens with others, and it happens with the world around us. And I think part of if I may get a little philosophical here, I think a big part of why we're ruining our planet is because we don't have that. We're not even connected to ourselves. Then we're not connecting to others truly. And how can we connect to our planet and take care of it if we're not even being able to connect and take care of us, right? So that's like my, I'm going off base here, but that's my little secret purpose.
No, I love that. And I agree with that so much. You're so right. If we can't understand us and be intimate with us and be just I, how can you, yet alone contact with another person, yet alone a tree? I mean, you may hug a tree, but it's kind of like, or you walk past the tree, you don't even appreciate it. You don't even say, oh, thanks, thanks for giving me there. Thanks for being there. Thanks for being there longer than me. Thanks for living on when I die. You're going to be around for so long. And
thanks for giving me some oxygen.
Yeah. Thanks for letting me breathe. You're so right. And then the other part that you said is, when we think about intimacy, a lot of people think sex, right? Straight away. Intimacy, we think sex, right? And the interesting part that you said is you can have sex without being intimate. And I believe you can be intimate without having sex.
Totally.
And that blows a lot of people's minds. They're going to be like, what? Is that even possible? How does that even work?
Oh my gosh. I mean, you can even have energetic orgasms. I mean, that's just, you get to a place where you learn to be so intimate with another being that there is actually an energy that is created that is absolutely orgasmic. And, I get super weird when I tell people this, but you can go do that with a tree too, by the way. There is a place where we can really, I fundamentally have learned to embrace this idea that orgasms are not just something that happens to our body, that is actually like a state of being that I think we can all live in, actually. I haven't figured out how to be there 24/7. I'll let everyone know when I have, probably write a book about it. But I know that we can sustain that feeling for way longer than we think we can, and we can sustain it with all sorts of different environments, and it doesn't have to be what we think of an orgasm as normally being, which just makes me, wonder sometimes. I'm like, is that what true intimacy with life looks like? Does it look like a continuous sort of orgasmic state of being so in touch with the vitality and the radiance and the life force around us that we are just in that sort of that energy?
Yeah, that sounds beautiful. That sounds amazing. Yeah, when you find out the formula, definitely keep us updated and let us know.
I have a feeling that we're meant to have, our cycles.
Yes. And, being always up and happy and, that feeling is also not that great, because earlier, like you said, you found, what you're meant to be doing through the downs. So
Totally.
we're meant to get those ups and downs. I mean, 100%. I couldn't agree more with you. I know that you talk about 5 aspects of intimacy. How do they play a role in the aspects of our lives? Totally.
Well, I mean, these are all the ways we interact with the world, right? So you've got your physical interaction, so touch, right? Some people think that I'm talking about sex when I'm talking about touch. I'm not. It's a hug. It's how close can you be to someone? Can you feel a table beneath you? Can you feel the floor? Actual physical touch, cuddles, just any of that, right? Physical touch. So we physically interact with the world, and that is one aspect of intimacy. And for some people, it comes very naturally, depending on how we're raised. And for some people, it's really tough. It can be really tough for them to want to be around someone and hug them and be touched and to touch platonically or any other way. And then we have our emotional self. And so how can I relate to you emotionally? How can you relate to me emotionally? How can I be in my own emotions and process them, be accepting of them, recognize them, understand them? Same with you, right? And, that's like a whole landscape that's interesting. I mean, we all go through moments where like, wow, I don't know what I'm feeling, but I'm definitely feeling something, right? But
I always say that. I'm like, I've got feelings. I don't know what they are, but they're feelings.
something's here, right? We have our emotional intimacy. Then we have, let's go to spiritual. So spiritual intimacy, whether you consider yourself a spiritual person or not, kind of what I consider spirituality is that, it's this sort of higher thing that is around us that maybe one day we will explain with science, maybe we won't. I mean, we do know that everything is all made of the exact same stuff, whether it's our bodies, it's the ground, it's the stars, whatever, we're all made of the same core material. So to me, you could think of that as spiritual. I mean, that's a pretty interesting thing to think about. Or the fact that we do have energetic connections, which science is more and more and more proving, right? There's, maybe it's just looking at a sunset and feeling like this awe for the beauty and the majesticness of it, right? But we have a spiritual intimacy that we go through, and that's different for everyone. For some people, it might look more like, ooh, I can appreciate nature. For some people, it might be the particles. For some people, it might be a religion, okay? And that's something we interact with and we share with the people around us as well. And then we have our sexual intimacy. What did I do? I did physical, I did sexual, spiritual. So we're in sexual intimacy. Of course, this is one everyone seems to know really well.
or not, or think they know, isn't it?
Idea. That's the first thing they usually think of with me, right? And so that's, of course, actually having like a sexual energy exchange, which, is really interesting because it doesn't actually always require physical sex either, right? Like I might meet someone and there might just be this like real pull to them, right? Like, and it feels sexual. And so if I've been raised to understand that when I have this sexual attraction to someone, that means that I want to have sex, physical sex with them, I might think this means that. But what I have learned is that that's also my creative energy, it's my fertility energy. And then maybe I actually just want to build something with that person. Like maybe that needs to be my next business partner. And there's something that we need to birth together, and it's not physical sex.
Wow.
But we have a sexual exchange that happens, right? And it's just this really primal energy that feeds our bodies, and we can learn to use it way more powerfully than most of us do. And we can actually channel it into physical sex and divine union, and sexual exchanges might be kinky, might be like whatever. I mean, there's so much in the sexual world to explore. It's a huge topic. And then we have the mental. So the mental is a lot of what you and me are doing. Actually, it's I have ideas and philosophies and things like this, and I can share them and articulate them with you. I can explore them in my own mind, and you can share them with me, right? So we have a mental sort of world that we can exchange and explore.
I love that. So every time I do a podcast, if I'm doing it the right way, I'm being intimate. I'm being intimate with the individual on the other side, because we're on the same wavelength, we're understanding each other, we're flowing, and we're exchanging information.
Yeah, I mean, even if you're arguing with someone, you're being intimate with them.
True. That's so true.
Like if you're sitting there in a store and somebody triggers you and you guys are having, like, I see it on videos, people have like shouting matches, right? I mean, they think they're not being intimate, but they are. I mean, if one of them didn't want to have sort of an intimate exchange with the other, they just wouldn't be doing it. It would just be like, whatever you're doing is not really, I'm not into it on a triggered level, on a, whatever, any level, right? And you just be kind of walking away.
Wow, this is mind blowing. I mean, I've just been sitting here listening, and I'm like, those 5 things just blew my mind. I could just imagine the audience, they're just like, whoa, the intimacy has just totally changed. And the thing that you said about, the physical one, where not the physical one, the sexual one, when someone's sitting across you, and if you believe, you could either believe like you're sexually attracted to that individual and that means sex, or it might be an attraction happening there, and it may be birthing a business plan, birthing something together. Like that is mind blowing. And I mean, this education needs to be out there so much more. Like this is crazy. This is so informative and mind blowing. And I mean, to you, it might just be, like an everyday thing because you do this every day. But, to us, this is just like, wow.
It wasn't at the time I had the realization. Like, I mean, I've gone my entire life and I've had a lot of partners that are like, are you bisexual? Or are you pansexual? Like, what's going on? Like, you have like this thing that happens with people. And, I was like, so I explored all these different realms and I went into, relationships that felt very monogamous. And yet I still had this, I would sit down across from some people and there was just this, and it was like, am I just meant to be like, more sexual with more people? Am I meant, like, what does this mean? Right. And then I started to notice that as soon as I investigated the relationship without immediately going to sex, that there was a creative energy between us. And that as soon as we were willing to play with that, I no longer needed to play out in an actual like sexual form. And then sometimes it does. But, I think this is a really big thing for a lot of people because they think that they may be wanting to have sex with more people, but sometimes it's not about that. And it's just really what we've been taught. We're just taught that this is how you feel and this is what this means. And I don't think it's true.
Yeah. Wow. That's so interesting. And just that, imagine how that would, I guess, save in quotation marks, a lot of couples, a lot of marriages, but also a lot of individuals to be more comfortable within themselves.
Yeah, well, exactly. And I mean, maybe somebody does just want to pour that all into sexual relationships, and that's totally cool too, right? Like, but I think when we start exploring these energies, it gives us more options, right? We can start metabolizing things in a way that feels true to us versus what may be true for another person.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, I think in the realm of intimacy and relationships, that's really important.
Yeah.
Because, you have a lot of people out there saying this is how everybody is because that's how they are, but it's not true.
Yeah.
That's how they are.
Yeah, 100%.
That's what works for them, but it doesn't mean it works for everybody else.
Yeah, and a lot of things in life are built upon that, isn't it? What I think I like or what I think I do, everyone else is going to anyway. So it's an interesting aspect.
It's everywhere, right? Like, like intermittent I see everything about this intermittent fasting, and I'm like, that's beautiful. I know lots of people it works really well for. I know lots of people it works horrendously for. Like their bodies are just not meant to be doing that particular, so I'm like, we are so individual in our needs. And I think part of really embracing intimacy in relationships is understanding that we all are super unique. And just because something really works for you or vibes you up or really makes you feel alive or turned on or turned off doesn't mean that's necessarily true for another person. And it doesn't make either person right or wrong.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and if we understand that, so many things will change in our life, in our business, in our personal life, in our sexual life, in our relationships, in everything. Yeah, it's so interesting. So you did touch upon the business thing about the sexual relationship and stuff like that, right? So the individuals listening are more likely business professionals. So how can intimacy actually help them achieve a successful business? I mean, when someone says intimacy is going to help you achieve a successful business, you think, I want to sleep my way to the top. Like, what am I going to do,
Well, sure, we can talk about that.
So what does that look like? Like not sleeping your way to the top. What does it look like to have intimacy, to have a successful business?
Well, so one of the clearest roads I find with business professionals to bring this out is communication skills are imperative in the business world. If you don't have good communication skills, your business is going to show it. So the better your communication skills, which is a relationship and intimacy skill is, the better your business is going to do. Number one, okay, our businesses are built on relationships. they're built on relationships, whether it's a client relationship, whether it's a partner relationship. I have business partners all the time. That's like a marriage. I have to counsel them like I counsel a marriage, right? So having really good communication skills, relationship skills, intimacy skills is going to open a lot more doors. It's not that you can't have a successful business without being good at relationships and intimacy. Lots of people do. It's totally fair. But if you want your business to go like next level, and you really want to have an environment with your employees that feels really healthy and nurturing, this is really important, right? I get so many people in as clients who are in really unhealthy workplaces, and they really want to stay there, but it's affecting their productivity. It's affecting how they are going home to their spouses, and then how they're coming back to work. I actually think this is probably one of the under talked about subjects in business, is actually relationships within the workplace. People are different. And if we can cultivate a space in our business where there's room for healthy relationships, things get done so much better. So much better. I mean, just like a rough example, I have people coming in often that talk about in their workplace where they process things. So we all process things differently. Some of us are able to immediately process something and come to a solution. And some people need a few days to actually really process through something and then come to the table with a solution. And if you try and push them before then, they're not going to come up with anything that's actually really productive. And it's going to stress them out. And sometimes those are like your absolute geniuses in the office. And you do not, they're your genius partners, your genius, we always mesh with our yin and yang. So how should I put it? In your business, a lot of people are so used to handling relationships the way that they like it, that they bring a whole bunch of people around them in all ways that are just like them. And that's, I'm telling you, that's limiting. You want to bring everybody that's not like you. You want to have all the people with other areas of genius to make you even more successful, right? And so in doing that, we need to understand that everybody is different. And so one of the things I see is this processing time, and there'll be like kind of a workplace where everybody needs to process immediately. And there's this person saying, okay, I just need a couple days to process this. Can I get back to you on Friday? And the workplace is like, no. You must do this now. And they're either skipping past this person's really great ideas because they're not waiting, or they're discounting them, and then that person leaves. It's so interesting, so we have things like that. We have just being able to have healthy communication in our business. Like we might be doing business together and a hurdle comes up, a challenge. And you might, come to me and you might have this problem. And if I'm not willing to listen, I might just sort of push past it. You might feel resentment. And eventually that could be the end of our relationship. It could be the reason I go behind your back and write bad reviews. It could be like, there's all these different things that could happen that could start whittling away at your business that could have been prevented if I hadn't been able to sit there and go, oh, tell me more. What do you mean by that? This is what I think of when you say that word. Is that what you meant? Oh, that's not what you meant. Oh, well, how could I support you in the future, around that particular topic? Oh, well, that's something I could do, or maybe I can't do it. Is there another way we could work around this, or figure this out? And you end up coming up with a business that's actually based in human relationships that work, where you have higher creativity, you have higher productivity, and people are happier. And you're avoiding the big problems. Like sometimes the most difficult moments that come up with clients and other business people, and in the past would have been like, I would just want to like move away from, because it just seemed astronomically like, now those are the moments I look forward to. And I'm like, oh, what breakthrough are we going to have when we get down to the bottom of what's going on? Right. yeah, people don't think of people bringing traumas into workplaces and into their businesses, but we do. We're all, whole human beings. And as much as people say that they're only this way at work and they're only this way, no. The way you are at work is the way you are at home, is the way you are in the bedroom, is the way you are, it's everywhere. And sure, we can compartmentalize ourselves, but if there's places that you're blocked or you're not able to see yourself, that is going to flow through. And if you haven't yet seen it showing up in your business, you're going to. I see there's two ways if you want to become a really evolved human being to become an evolved human being. One is to have intimate long-term relationships, and the other is to become an entrepreneur or run a business. Everything, you will see parts of yourself showing up in those places very clearly. And you can either attend to them and have a breakthrough and become more successful, or you can ignore them and stay where you are, or potentially lose your business because of it.
Yeah, wow. That's so true, 100%. Because being in a long-term relationship and running your own business, that's just communication. Like, that's the 101, the 102, the whatever you want to call it, the mastermind of communications all in there. And like you said, you'll have breakthroughs and you'll have, downs and lows. And it's so interesting because I wouldn't have thought that intimacy would assist in a business, but the way you just break it down, it makes absolutely total sense. Because if we don't understand ourselves, if we don't understand our business partners, our employees, how we're going to achieve our end outcome for our business, it's not going to happen. We need to be self-aware, and we also need to be aware of the others around us. And the interesting thing that you said is, when you're communicating with someone, you go, this is what I hear. Is this right? Or something on the lines of, can you break that down for me? But that, Leanne, that takes this thing called time and this thing called patience and listening and and these things to a lot of business owners they see that and they go, there goes money. Or they see that and there goes my business, or something along those lines. Time, money is gone. But it's that longevity, the long term of the long-term relationship that you said is in line with the business, is where success essentially arises, and where productivity arises, and where everything where the wheel turns where it's supposed to turn in the business. So that just was a mind-blowing moment with how you explain how intimacy can help with business.
And around the thing that you've brought up around, you could be spending a lot of time doing these things. There's another relationship skill: boundaries and discernment, right? Do you have boundaries? So are you, can you have someone come to you with a big thing and say, you know what, right now I'm in the middle of, say this task, and I really need to focus on this. And can we reconnect on this in a couple days when I'm feeling, prepared to have this conversation? I have the time and energy for it, and you have the time and energy for it, right? Are you being discerning in your business? One of the big things that I had to learn is, just like in my personal relationships, I was just like having lots of people come in that needed a lot of energy from me and a lot of time, and they weren't really providing what they needed. It wasn't a very reciprocal relationship, right? And so in our businesses, really understanding too, that discernment is important, and we want to really have the best people on our teams that we can pour into, and that pour into us works the best, right? Because, you could go use all these lovely skills, but if you have no discernment and you have a whole bunch of people on your team that are just kind of like sucking your energy all day and not really holding up their end of agreements, and you're just like discussing the same stuff again and again and again, I mean, this is a bad relationship. Business or personal, discernment and boundaries is also a big part in that. So if you're having these really good relationships, it should always be equaling better productivity and money. It shouldn't be taking away from that.
And that's where the self-respect, self-love come in, where you just also say no, I believe, or step outside, and that doesn't mean you're not successful by leaving something and stepping away from it. It just means that you are worthy.
Yeah, the most successful people have walked away from a lot of stuff. I mean, really, I had a friend that ended up on Oprah, and she was this was years back, and she was so offended because Oprah did not talk to her. She did not have time for her. It was just like, when you get on my stage, here it is, and that's that. And her staff said, because she has very clear boundaries around where and who she will spend time and energy with. And I just thought, oh, interesting, isn't that? But I was like, this is something to look forward to. Like, where can I find the self-worth that I can have these very clear boundaries and not be affected by people being offended by my boundaries, and yet be more clear on where I use my energy so I can be better in my business, so I can be better in my intimate relationships, right? Like, we don't all of us just have limitless energy for every single human being that would, maybe somebody does. I mean, I haven't met them, but discernment is really important.
I love that example of Oprah that you said, because it's just brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. And it's necessary, it's necessary for us to be able to do what we want to do and what we need to do, but also give, so we can also give. Oprah is only able to do what she does because she does those things. And look how many lives she has actually impacted because she does that. So I love that you mentioned that. So now we kind of understand how intimacy helps our business, but how would you believe that it actually helps us achieve optimal health? And
wow, in so many ways. So, I'll just use I'll just share from personal experience. But, when I wasn't discerning about my relationships to the level that I could be, when I was spending a lot more energy pouring into other people, when I was people pleasing, let's talk adrenal fatigue. I felt worn out. I felt exhausted. I felt depleted. I didn't have time for the things and the energy for the things I really loved and wanted. And yeah, it was a disaster zone. Quite frankly, when I look back at the time, I seemed to be functioning like most people around me. It was normal. Like, everyone did the same thing. Now I'm just like, no way. My quality of life is really important to me. And our relationships play into that huge. If you're in a relationship at home that is depleting you and you don't get it figured out, that is affecting you at work, right? How long until it affects your sleep? Is it affecting your stress levels? Walking around with high cortisol levels all day, this is not good. So many people think that by diving into relationship skills, they're going to have that increased stress, because a lot of the time it seems like it's easier just to avoid it, right? It's like, well, if I can just work around that problem with that person, or I can just, maybe that will be easier. Because they're scared about moving into a conversation that could be triggering, that could bring up things that maybe means that relationship has to totally change and transform. And there's shadow parts of themselves that they might have to face, and in the person that they're in a relationship that they might have to face that they don't want to. And I found that people are the most afraid of their insides and what they really feel and think and who they really are, and other people too. It literally seems to be one of the biggest unknowns. And the thing is when we actually start embracing that field, we start seeing that conflicts that used to cause us a ton of stress are actually not super stressful. We can work through them. They can actually make our relationships better. We become better people at the same time. We learn our own boundaries better. It's through relationships that I've learned how to improve my self-care, improve my boundaries, notice where I'm not feeling worthy, noticing where I was shrinking. It's so huge. I was talking to a person the other day, and they were, talking to their big, huge team, and some feedback came that they were kind of scary. And this is a very empowered female who has like the softest, kindest heart in the entire universe, and is not scary, but she is assertive, and she does have boundaries. And she realized in our conversation that she actually has people on her team that don't have high self-value, that aren't assertive. And she was actually shrinking herself and her business down to fit these people, and then beating herself up at home on top of it, which was affecting her personal relationship. That's not healthy.
No.
That's not healthy at all. And as soon as she really stepped into her own power, and then she started empowering her team to be more assertive, to have boundaries, to actually communicate them, then her whole team started going up, and now their health is better, her health is better, right? Like now they're working better. So, yeah. And then even intimacy, like just with your own body, like listening to it, what is it saying to you? Is it saying that this particular thing and person and decision is in tune with it? Is it saying that you need to do something different? Is it saying you need to take a day to make a decision? There is so much information that we get in our relationship with ourselves that keeps our physical health on track, our sexual health on track, our financial health on track. And when we ignore it, things go off track. And they will continue going off track until it's like banging at your door. Until it's that kind of size problem where you can't ignore it. And you see it. Whatever people want to think about, cancers and this type of thing. But when I see people that are really struggling with their relationship with their own body and their own self, and even their relationship with others, I often see it manifesting in physical ailments. I have people coming, sexual dysfunction too, things like this. Like when people come in to see me about these types of things, usually it comes down to a relationship issue with themselves, some trauma maybe that they experienced earlier, not having clear boundaries. I don't know how to separate, in fact, relationships and intimacy from our health. I don't think they can be.
It's interlinked, completely interlinked.
Yeah.
100%. And like you said, the high cortisol, the stress, the non-sleep. That's all happens when you don't communicate properly, isn't it? You get stressed out, you don't sleep well, you reminisce on all the thoughts are racing in your head, or you just block it off and you just oversleep, and then you overeat, and then you overdo things, and then addictions and so forth.
Oh, totally. Or you become the volcano, the passive aggressive human being, right? It's like,
love them.
everything's fine, right? And then it's like one little thing and you're literally vomiting all over everybody emotionally. And it didn't have to happen that way. It didn't have to be that way.
No, 100% no. So, you've spoken about this communication. You've spoken about this intimacy, right? But for the audience to take it in, what would be some practical tips to be more intimate with themselves, with people around themselves, but also communicate better? What would be maybe top 3, or when you think would be some practical tips that they can take on board and, start to do themselves?
I think your first key is always self-awareness. So just start being an observer, a witness to yourself. And when you do this, I always say, don't pull out the baseball bat when you notice something. I feel like everyone has a baseball bat that they carry around so they can kind of beat themselves up when they see something that they don't like. But you don't want to do that. You just want to be the observer. And just notice yourself and almost have a sense. It's just like watching someone else. You can almost have a sense of humor. I laugh at myself all the time when I watch myself. I'll kind of notice an interaction with someone and it's like, oh man, did I really go there? Like I did that. Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I see that. That's interesting. Why didn't I say how I felt there? Or, just noticing these subtle little things, like where do you not say something? And then did you learn at some point that you're not supposed to say everything because it might offend someone? Or is there a new way to think about it? And when, you notice that you don't say anything, is it just because you actually don't know a better way of saying it? Because it's usually the truth. We're taught like there's some things we don't say, and little white lies are saving everybody a lot of, oh my gosh, if I watched TV and told you all the weird little sayings we do about this, it's just better to ignore it. It's not true. It's just that you don't know a way to express it in a way that can be empowering for you and transformative and for the other person. So being aware of all our little things first, just watching ourselves, are you having an interaction with someone where you literally feel really triggered every time you have a reaction, every time you have an interaction with them, right? Just being aware of those things in the first place is your step number one. What makes your body feel good? What makes your body feel crappy? I mean, if you're sitting in an office meeting with someone and like your body's doing this, or your jaw's tightening, or all of a sudden your shoulders ache, there's something going on there that you need to look at, right? Or do you all of a sudden feel easeful and you're leaning in and you're like, what's going on with that person, right? Like there's something that you really like there. So being aware, self-aware is like number one. And then what you do with that is really your number two, right? Are you noticing that it's really hard to communicate what you think? And then how could you take another step, an action step now, to learn how to communicate your feelings with people in ways that work? Are you finding that you offend people every time you open your mouth and people are just offended by you? Okay, well, you know what? Next step, action step might be, how can I learn to speak in a way that's more productive so I'm not, just like loading it on to something? Are you, finding that you're triggered around people and you're not saying anything and you're just repressing it? Are you avoiding having conversation, right? So noticing yourself and then noticing like what would be something that you could do about that, right? So it might be like, well, I don't want to avoid people so much. Okay, well, what's an action step now that you can take around that, right? Does that mean that you need to have some boundaries and some space so you can really think about what you need to say to that person? Is it, there's basically, we need to have self-awareness. Then we need to look with an open mind at if there's other solutions. And then we need to find an action step that follows. Sometimes the action step might be easy. You might be able to Google it. Sometimes you may need to call a professional and ask them for some help, right? We don't have all the answers ourselves, and we don't see ourselves very clearly sometimes too. And sometimes we don't see ourselves with enough empathy either. And so having, another person help guide you through those can be helpful. So I think that's pretty good in terms of increasing your intimacy. And then I would say in terms of communication, like just as like a really nice guideline, nonviolent communication is a beautiful skill to learn. It'll really help you a ton. I think everyone should learn it. I don't call it nonviolent. I've kind of tweaked it. I call it conscious communication. But learning how to reflect back to someone what they're saying, ask them what they're saying. Everybody thinks because they speak the same language, they understand each other, but they don't. What one word means to me means a totally different thing to you. And so when we can learn to really consciously communicate, I think that that's just a huge game changer. And then I think maybe my third tip would be, really figuring out your own self-care, because we're not good in relationships unless we're taking care of ourselves. if our cup is empty, it's empty. We don't have time and patience for someone else. So figuring out what nourishes you. Do you need to go for walks outside once in a while? Do you need a warm bath? Do you need to say, hey, I need an hour of me time? What is it that you need? Do that. And it's so different for every single person. But having something that nurtures you is really important. And, I know I have clients that have sandboxes in their office because, just to get their hands in some sand and move it around for 20 minutes, helps them relieve tension if it's a rough day, right? So figuring out what nourishes you and doing that. So self-awareness, being willing to have an open mind and then actually taking an action step around that. And actually learning to take care of yourself. I guess there's 4 tips. Because communication was in there. Learning conscious communication. And then, good self-care is really important.
Yeah, wow. That is absolutely brilliant. And a lot of things to take on. I mean, if individuals just take on 2 minimum of those, it would be like a game changer. Even 1 would be a game changer. Even just the fact of just sitting there and watching yourself and in a relationship or in communication and not beating yourself up, that would be a game changer.
It's always small steps. As a therapist, one of the things that I've learned is really important when we're dealing with the subconscious mind. If you're not going in and doing something in trance state, we have protective mechanisms. And so we must do small steps that kind of go under and beneath the ego's radar. Because when we try and do these big, huge changes, the ego's like, whoa, no, this has been protecting me for years. This is good for us. Stop. Right. And you'll meet a lot of resistance. But if you just take little tiny steps, like just being kinder to yourself, that will change everything drastically in ways you can't even imagine with consistency.
Wow. Yeah, that's absolutely amazing. Those practical tips are extraordinary. Thanks so much for sharing them with us. But before we end, I'd like to ask all my guests, Leanne, what is your best kept natural health hack? Is there something that you do in the morning, at night, maybe every day, even once a week, that's your little health hack and that keeps you at success and optimal health throughout your weekday?
I think nature's probably mine. It is. Whether I'm going for a walk and I'm just in a meditative state, watching how raindrops fall and how they move and how water rushes and slows and or how trees grow. It grounds me, it recenters me. And on top of it, everything in nature is a metaphor for what's going on in your life. You're having a rough day and it feels turbulent. Go look at a river. There's spots that are rough and pushing forward and spots that are soft and gentle. And it's some days are rough and some days are gentle and still flowing forward.
That's so beautiful. That's so beautiful and so true. If we step outside of this and just be, we can see so many different things and feel and hear so many different things and be in touch. So Leanne, individuals who've been listening to you today and are mind blown about intimacy and business and communication, where would they be able to find you?
So I would say the easiest place to find me is I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram, LinkedIn. You can just look me up, Leanne Frances Bates, The Intimacy Authority. You'll find me there. On Facebook, if you're just interested in resourcing yourself, I have a group that's completely complimentary. It's literally my give. It's not my place where I sit there and just sell people for the fun of it. It's actually a fully beautiful, safe community. We all contribute. It's a beautiful place to go if you're looking for some resources. But that's really the easiest. Just look me up, Google me. I come up. You'll find me pretty easily. My website is currently under construction. I'm re-beautifying it. It was super old. So I'm this has got to go. So you can't find me there, which is fine. But I'm pretty much on all the social media. And you'll see I've got my phone number, my email there. People can just email me to support@leanne.love, which is like support and then at lee-ann.love. And I'm happy to actually answer my emails. I like actually connect with people in person if you can.
Beautiful. Well, I'll put all those details underneath in the show notes also so people can access them, including your group, so people can access that too. And get that amazing information that you offer and share that amazing intimacy with other individuals. I absolutely love that. Look, I absolutely appreciate and thank you for your time and sharing so much knowledge, so much wisdom, and so much information with us that is hopefully I know it's going to help me moving forward with my communication and my intimacy. I can just imagine how many other individuals you will impact with this episode. So I just wanted to say thank you so much for your time and being on a Natural Health podcast. I really, really appreciate it, Leanne.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us at the Natural Health podcast. And remember, the missing link between failure and success is your health.